Salam, Namaste, Adab, and welcome to today's event. Today we have two very well-known speakers and activists, civil society activists, political thinkers, political activists, and a politician also, as well as Subhashini Ali and Professor Roop Verma from Lucknow, who is former Vice Chancellor of Lucknow University, Head of Philosophy Department. Subhashini Ali is a well-known CPI activist, member Politburo, ex-member of Parliament, and President of All India Democratic Women's Association.
Vice President.
Vice President, chaliye. And the theme is going to be Manuwadi assault on constitutional rights. Manuwadi translated as patriarchal and caste-based assault on constitutional rights in India. The opening remarks are given by our own Sunita Viswanath from here, USA. She is not physically present due to some emergency situation in the family, so she has sent a recorded message. So, Faisal, let's play the recorded message for the opening remarks.
I'm Sunita Viswanath, co-founder and executive director of Hindus for Human Rights. We are a US-based nonprofit just 3 years old, but building a base of progressive and anti-caste Hindus across the US, in India, and in diaspora countries like the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia. Our mission is two-pronged. On the one hand, we add an unapologetic Hindu voice and force to the resistance movements against the Hindutva chokehold on Indian democracy and the rights of minorities. Equally important are our efforts to lift up, practice, and embody the most inclusive and progressive tenets and practices from Hindu traditions and texts. The first part is outwards facing, our work in the world for Loka Samgraha, or the welfare of all. The second part is more interior, our efforts to answer and address. How does an anti-caste Hindu live? And what does Hinduism look like without caste? The topic of today's gathering is the patriarchal and caste-based assault on constitutional rights. The situation currently being faced by filmmaker Leena Manimekale, someone we in Hindus for Human Rights have become quite close to, makes explicit the misogyny and casteism of Hindutva ideology and its current regime. An established and award-winning Indian filmmaker Leena's small film, Kali, which she made as a fun graduate student project, has turned her life upside down. The Hindutva critique of the film is that it is anti-Hindu, because in Leena's film, a performance documentary, the goddess Kali, actually the filmmaker herself in a Kali costume, walks around Toronto during a pride festival holding a pride flag, drinks alcohol, and smokes a cigarette. The viewer sees the local Toronto revelers' reactions to Kali walking through their city. Leena, as Kali, never changes her expression throughout the evening. She's equanimous in her response to each person she encounters. There's nothing anti-Hindu about Leena's Kali. In Leena's own community in rural Tamil Nadu, the goddess Kali is earthy, as she puts it, and devotees offer her meat, alcohol, marijuana, and cigarettes. Hindu traditions do not discriminate against the LGBTQ community. In fact, the Hindu divine transcends form and gender. And so why is Leena facing 14 FIRs, or arrest warrants, in India? Why does she receive so many disgusting, vile, violent threats of rape and murder, described in detail on social media? And why did a Hindu priest in North India offer a reward, a bounty, for her beheading? Is the act of reflecting, meditating on a Hindu goddess's response to a melancholy modern Western city anti-Hindu? Or are the threats of rape and beheading and arrest anti-Hindu? The attacks on Leena Manimekhalai stem not only from misogyny, but also from casteism. For it is communities of the so-called lower end of the caste spectrum who worship Kali in such earthy ways. The Hindutva project is to homogenize Hindu practice and render anything but purely Brahminical practice blasphemy. The god most often associated with the Hindutva project is Rama, and the Hindutva Rama never seems to have Sita by his side. Leena is stuck in Canada. Her beloved grandmother died and she couldn't go home. She feels alienated and depressed in Canada. Her family, her work, her life is in India. But if she goes back home, she will surely be arrested, if not worse. That Hindutva ideology is patriarchal, anti-woman, is beyond question. Ram without Sita, Kali or Durga tamed and sanitized, and India's real-life goddesses, our daughters, are raped, brutalized, disempowered. One horrific display of Hindutva misogyny was the sad episode of the Bulli Bai and Sulli deals, when Hindutva-aligned youth created an app where Muslim women, real women whose faces were actually shown, were auctioned off virtually. Another was the gang rape and murder of a Dalit woman in Hathras, UP, by upper caste Hindu men in September of 2020. The victim's body, that is, the evidence, was cremated before her parents could see their daughter and perform the final rites. Not only were people like journalist Siddiq Kappan arrested simply because he was traveling to Hathras to cover this story, but Priyanka and Rahul Gandhi were detained as they were headed to Hathras to be with the family of the victim. Of course, the Gandhis were released quickly, but Kappan is still in jail 2 years later. And what's more, Atikur Rahman, a heart patient, whose crime was simply that he was with Siddiq Kappan, was arrested and is still in jail today. Rahman has been repeatedly refused medical bail, and his doctor has stated his fears that Rahman will die in custody, just like Father Stan Swami. This Hindutva regime makes no pretense about its hatred of Muslims, but makes a big show of being caste blind. Their object, of course, is to win Dalit votes. It is tragic that an increasing percentage of Dalit Indian voters succumb to fear and hatred of Muslims and vote for the Hindutva Brigade. The Hindutva movement is following a blueprint drawn up 100 years ago by V.D. Savarkar and his fascist contemporaries. Savarkar argued that India belongs to Hindus alone and that Muslims and Christians were foreigners and do not belong. Savarkar admired Hitler and Mussolini and wanted India's Muslims to be treated exactly like the Jews of Europe. Godse, Mahatma Gandhi's assassin, was a follower of Savarkar and Hindutva, and today the same playbook is at an advanced stage. The Hindutvadis delivered on the promise that Babri Masjid would be demolished, also on the promise that Ram Mandir yahi banega. They are hard at work on the promise that Kashi Mathura baki hai. And we see bulldozer Raj with bulldozers mowing down Muslim homes throughout India, and even making a star appearance in the India Day parade in Edison, New Jersey. Hindutva has delivered on all its promises so far, and if we do not stop this monstrosity of hate in its tracks, it will deliver on its ultimate promise, India as a Hindu Rashtra. In December of last year, Hindutva sadhus and sadhvis in the hundreds gathered in Haridwar for a Dharam Sansad. They explicitly called for a genocide of Muslims. They said they wanted in India what was happening to the Rohingya in Myanmar. They made children march with swords. Some of those same sadhus released a draft constitution at the time of India's 75th anniversary in August. This was their draft constitution for the Hindu Rashtra they are building, and they released it proudly to the press. And these are not fringe religious leaders. They are powerful religious leaders that are closest to the Prime Minister and the government. For all their claims of being anti-caste, the Constitution was based on Varnashram Dharma, birth-based caste. Caste was the framework for their entire society. The laws and policies were based on the Treta Yuga, when Rama was thought to have lived. And in this Hindutva Rashtra, Muslims and Christians don't have a vote. This vision is far-fetched, no doubt, and hopefully will never be actualized. However, I implore all Indians, especially my fellow Hindus, to wake up, step up, speak up, because this dream of the most extreme of the Hindu forces ruling India is on the fast track to being realized. There are many who are resisting Hindutva ideology, but not enough from the Hindu community. For most Hindus, it is important that we each be allowed to make up our minds for what we believe and about which religious practices we choose and which we reject. As the Rig Veda states, Ano Badrakartavo Yantu Vishvataha, let noble thoughts come from all directions. Hindus are called to being open-minded. For most Hindus, God is in all people, all creatures, and every part of the universe. If we believe this, we cannot perpetrate or tolerate the rape and murder of a Dalit girl or the lynching of a Muslim boy. For most Hindus, there is no Ram without Sita, no Shiva without Shakti. If we believe this, we cannot tolerate the brutal violence towards women by Hindutva-aligned people and forces. Hindus of conscience must realize that if we do not speak up, step up, stand up against this horror that is Hindutva hatred, we are complicit in the hell it is creating. Please reach out to Hindus for Human Rights to be a part of a movement of Hindus who are radically inclusive and pluralistic and categorically opposed to caste. Thank you.
This was Sunita Viswanath from Hindus for Human Rights, giving her opening statement. So now I invite Professor Roop Rekha Verma to have her thoughts expressed. Roop Rekha ji, आप मौजूद हैं?
Unmute करो.
जी, unmute. Yeah, please. Go ahead.
जी, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Oh,
yes.
Okay. Thank you, Raziz Sahab and your team for giving me an opportunity to talk to diaspora on a very, very crucial subject which is bothering us a lot. And it's the present situation, as we all can already see, is very, very dark and very, very hopeless. Let me begin by going to a short, background of today's situation. India, let us recall once again in our minds that India gained nationhood only in 1947 when we got freedom. And when Constitution was made a few years later, this Constitution gave us a dream, a promise, and an agenda to restructure the society which was prevalent at that time. And since that time, since the Constitution was adopted by Indian Parliament, since that time, a struggle, a conflict is going on between those who wish to realize the dream enshrined in the Constitution and those who still wish to retain a society which is hierarchical, which is divided into religious communities, which is divided into castes, subcastes, and ad infinitum. So this conflict between two dreams is continuously going on in our society, but the hopeful thing was that different governments in India, despite having committed lots of mistakes, they still gave us hope that we are inching towards realizing the dream enshrined in the Constitution. And this dream was basically having democracy in real sense in India. And democracy would mean that every individual would be given equal rights as citizens, equal playing field, and there would be no discrimination because one belonged to a collectivity. So every individual will have human rights, and the actual ground for realizing those human rights on equal basis, whether he or she belonged to any particular religion or caste or any other social group, equal rights would be guaranteed on the basis of his or her being an individual. And alongside, a right was also given by Constitution to form your own collectivities. When the Constitution was adopted, if you look into the documents, even at that time, different organizations and their proteges blamed Nehru and Ambedkar of destroying Hindu religion by giving rights to widows, by proclaiming equality of citizens, etc., etc. So this conflict is continuing since the declaration, the adoption of Constitution, conflict between those who wish to continue with hierarchical and divided society and those who wish to see India as a society which is equal in all respects. Yet, different governments, as I said earlier, despite having made different various mistakes, never, proclaimed aversion to constitutional values, and they kept on, doing some things, bringing schemes, taking steps, even though half-heartedly, towards bringing this equality. And we were assured that with social groups bringing in more awareness, more commitment to equality, and we could protest, we could raise voices. We pressurized the government, the different movements in society flourished at that time. Many reformative steps were taken, and we were inching towards that dream enshrined in the Constitution. But for last a few years, what change has taken place is that the government openly supports those who wish to promote non-equal society, who wish to promote division in society, whether it be on the basis of religion or on the basis of caste or gender. Since we are discussing casteistic and patriarchal rise in India, let us see what is happening for past few years. the nation has been declared as the most dangerous country in the whole world for women. And after it was declared as the most dangerous country in the world, there has not been any study or survey assuring us that we are improving after that. So you see the government data, you see the data recently released by the Statistics Department of India, you will find that violence on women and the most heinous crime like rape have increased manifold in our society. Justice process has been very lax and delayed, very time consuming, very harassing. And within these victims of violence, you will find that the number of Dalit women has increased. Many examples have already been given by the previous speaker, Sunita ji. So I don't want to repeat. In Hathras case, equally in Phulpur case, Unnao case, Kannauj case, there are so many examples. In all these cases, the targets have been Dalit women. And the influential people have gone to assure those perpetrators who belonged to higher caste that they will be saved. So this is the situation today in India, that if a Dalit woman is raped and even murdered, there would be some stooges in the eye, in full eye view of the government and police and judiciary. They will take side of the rapes. Not only this, they would occasionally even welcome them and honor them. Bilkis Bano case, in which I and Subhashini ji and another third person have filed a petition against the remission of the culprits, the rapists and murderers were welcomed, they were felicitated, and they were garlanded. In many other cases, the Kathua rape case, a small child, girl child was raped and murdered. There, a whole protest, a rally was taken out by these people who are Manuwadi people, who were supported by the present government. They took out a rally in support of the rapists and used the tricolor of the country. No one said that their sentiments were hurt by using the national symbol tricolor in defense of rapists. And the Bilkis Bano case rapists were called Brahmins, high caste people, sanskaris, and a BJP minister said, BJP member said that they were high caste people and therefore not wrong, whereas they were proven guilty by the court. So this is the scenario presently in India, that both gender-wise and caste-wise, the crimes are increasing, the rights are being snatched away, the intellectuals, high intellectuals, young people who love their country and therefore they raise demands for better education, better jobs, opportunities, for a society in which conflict is less, for solidarity between different groups on the basis of different religious groups and different caste groups. These people are in jail year after year. They don't get bail even after years and years. But these rapists, those people who give open calls to rape women of certain religion or caste, they are given bail within a day. And then we do not hear about the progress of the case. The cases are very slow in these cases, but in the case of those who are raising valid demands, the demands which they have raised, for raising these demands, they are accused of sedition and they are put in jail. So during last 8 or 10 years, we find a wave of defense of rapists and murderers, and those who wish to create conflict on the basis of religion, caste, and gender. And those people are being encouraged in India who belong to the ruling classes, or they are near to ruling classes. They obey their agenda and they are defended even if they commit crimes. The story of Kappan was mentioned in Sunitaji's speech. I stood surety for his bail. Normally, a bail is given within a couple of days. The paper verification is done immediately. But in Kappan's case, it is 3 months now, and bail papers have still not been checked, and the sureties have not been called for the final hearing in the court. So this Manuwadi agenda is working with force these days in India. Those political parties which which had the major agenda of opposing Manuwad, they are silent. The social groups which were working for an egalitarian society, for a society favoring plurality, plurality of faith, plurality of lifestyle, plurality of culture, those NGOs, those organizations are being restricted. Different sorts of restrictions are being put on them. Many of them have been denied for this FCRA, foreign currency rule. As per this rule, their registrations have been cancelled. So the organizations and the activists who stand for equality of citizens, who stand for composite culture, who stand for dignity of individuals, and who stand for casteless society, equality between all kinds of people, who stand for women's rights and Dalits' rights, their spaces have been restricted. They are being harassed on some or the other excused. They are not allowed to go out and protest. Many times I have been under house arrest so that I don't go out to participate in a rally. And same must be the experience of other activists. So I would not extend my speech. I would only say that we are passing through very dark times. The judiciary has not given us much hope to rely upon it. I do not know when Allah or Ishwar would intervene in such a situation. For us, the last door is court, and courts have not given us much hopes. Yet, we have to keep raising our voices, and we do hope that if not in the lives of people of my age, at least the future generations will see a dawn of hope, and we will again be walking fast on the agenda of equality and casteless, plural, dignified society. Thank you.
Thank you, Roop Rekha ji. That's a very positive note that you ended with. And let's hope that we soon come back to that kind of society. Now I invite our Subhashini Ali Sahaba to have her thoughts expressed as long as you want to say whatever and give us a scenario and what's the path forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Razi Bhai. I was very pleased to see the topic that we were to speak on, because I think this is the way to address this subject. And the way you have put it, Manuwadi attacks on constitutional rights, I think that is the way that we have to address the situation in which we are in India today, because it is only if all the people, all the different sections of society who are under attack from Manuwad and from the principles of Manuwad, if they understand the nature of this attack, only then can we have the strength to actually push back this attack. And that's why I really welcome this topic. Now, what I would like to say is that today, of course, is 10th December, Human Rights Day. It's a very appropriate day for this discussion. But I think that 4 days ago, what happened in our country on the 6th of December in 1992, that was a day when many strands of Manuwadi thought and the Manuwadi agenda actually came together. Now, why do I say this? You see, the 6th of December is always observed all over our country as the death anniversary of Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar. And lakhs of people, unfortunately, especially Dalits, because we are such a caste-ridden society that many of us who owe all our rights to Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar and his vision, we don't appreciate him, we don't consider him our leader. But anyway, that is a day when crores of people all over our country remember Dr. Ambedkar, and when they remember him, obviously they remember the Constitution of India, to which he contributed so much. Now, I certainly don't feel that the attack on the Babri Masjid on the 6th of December was a coincidence. We as Indians, and Razi Bhai will out, he comes from the district of Azamgarh, and people in India, whether they're Hindus, whether they're Muslims, or whether they belong to any other religious group, they are extremely particular about having auspicious dates decided for them. I mean, nobody, Hindu, Muslim, or anything else, would arrange the marriage in their family without approaching someone, probably a Brahmin, to fix an auspicious date. What we call tithi nikalna, वो बहुत आवश्यक समझा जाता है. So I do not believe for one moment that the Sangh Parivar, which is the most committed to this kind of actually superstitious belief in astrology and auspicious dates and all the rest of it, I do not believe for one moment that they did not plan on destroying the Babri Masjid on the 6th of December without actually sending a very different kind of a message than many people at that time realized or were able to accept. What has been seen as the unrelenting accession to power of the Sangh Parivar has usually been explained in terms of there being a communal force that uses communal polarization to get votes, to mobilize votes, and to come to power. But I think that their agenda is, of course, is much, much wider and deeper than this. And I think it's very necessary to actually pay a lot of attention to what they themselves have been saying and claiming as to what their agenda is. Very often, a lot of people in India, well-meaning people, brush it off and say, oh, they don't really mean it, or they're just saying it. I don't believe it. I think that they believe what they say, and therefore, we should go back to 1950 when the Constitution of India was passed. And this constitution was totally unacceptable to the RSS. There was no BJP at that time. The RSS had come into existence, and it was not a major force, but it was a strong force in Indian society. And what the RSS leaders said in 1950 was, whether it was Golwalkar or whether it was Deen Dayal Upadhyay, what they said very clearly was, we do not accept this constitution. We do not accept this constitution that has been passed and accepted by the people of this representatives. We accept this constitution, which is the product of the labor of Dr. Ambedkar. And they said, we feel that Manusmriti is the Nyaya Shastra of this country. It is the legal text of this country. And laws and the framework of the laws that govern society in India should be based on the Manusmriti. Now, this is something they said in 1950. They have never gone back on it. They have never said that we do not believe in that anymore. It is people who have given them the benefit of the doubt and said, oh, they didn't really mean it. Now, I would like to say that I would have accepted this some time ago, but recently one has been going into Indian social history, social development seriously to try and understand where we are today. And what is extremely disturbing is that even though the constitution was passed, constitution was welcomed, and most parties of the political spectrum in our country accept the constitution to some extent or the other, the fact of the matter is that very large sections of Indian people are actually under the influence of Manusmriti. They are committed, or they are in favor of a hierarchical society. They're in favor of a society in which there is graded inequality. Dr. Ambedkar made this very significant point that the caste system in India is a system of graded inequality. It's not like a class division in which you have the rich and the owners of everything on one side, and you have the poor, the workers, those who do not own the means of production on the other side. That's a different kind of a division where most people know on which side of the divide they are. But the caste system, Varnashram Dharma, is a system of graded inequality in which there are many divisions. There are divisions within the upper caste, the Dvijas. There are divisions within the OBCs, who were known as the Shudras earlier. And there are divisions also among the Dalits and the Adivasis, especially among the Dalits who were known as the untouchables earlier. Within each of these broad caste groupings, there are further divisions and subdivisions. And so we have a situation in which each small section feels that it should try and get as close to the section above it as possible and as far away from the section below it as possible. And this is what creates a situation in which those who are the oppressed, those who are the humiliated, those who are given no kind of sense of equality, do not come together. It is very difficult for them to unite. And this is something that we have to all realize, because very often people talk in very simplistic terms. Oh, if these castes come together, 85% आ जाएंगे, 15% के खिलाफ, 15% kya kar lega, and so on and so forth. We've been hearing that for a long time. But the reality is that within the oppressed castes, they are less oppressed, more oppressed, even more oppressed, even less oppressed, and so on and so forth. It's graded inequality. And it was Dr. Ambedkar who was able to pin this point down for us and explain to us why it was annihilation of caste that we had to fight for, not this kind of caste-based unity, which actually was extremely fragile and came apart, which we have seen in the last years from 1990-91 when the Mandal Commission was passed. Now, having said this, I would like to say that what is Manuwadi actually? What does the Manusmriti say? It is not a document that only preaches caste inequality. It is a document that is committed to gender inequality, to caste birth-based inequality, and also to class inequality. On the one hand, we have the castes like the scheduled castes, the Dalits, and the Shudras, the OBCs, who are considered lower down in the hierarchy. They are not equal either to each other or to the upper caste. Then we have women, and I'd like to emphasize over here that according to Manusmriti, all women are to be deprived of their rights. And I'm saying this because large numbers of women are supporters of the Manuwadi forces. They do not see themselves as being at the receiving end of their policies. They do not see that all of them, whether they are high caste or whether they are middle caste or whether they are lower caste or whether they are scheduled caste or whether they are Adivasis, they do not see, they do not realize that all of them are deprived of their rights by the Manusmriti. What does the Manusmriti say? That when a woman is born, she's under the control of her father. Later on, she's in the control of her husband. If her husband dies, she's under the control of her son. If she comes back to her maternal home, she's under the control of her brother. So always a woman is to be under the complete control of a man. She cannot exert control on her body, on her life, on her future, on her choice of life partner or anything. And she's also to be deprived of property. And that's why it took right up to 1996 for Hindu women to be given some measure of equality with others, as far as Indians I never forget. Unfortunately, the communal polarization and the caste polarization that the Sangh Parivar has brought about is so deep that very large numbers of Indian women do not see the Manuwadi forces as their enemy to be fought if they are to protect their rights. And I think this is something that I cannot emphasize enough, and that we have to talk about much more than we are talking. The third thing I'd like to say is that Manusmriti is also extremely classist. What does it say? It says people who work, whether they work in fields or whether they work, obviously there were no factories at that time, but as those who work in other fields, those who work for a master, they have no rights. They only have the right to work and the right to serve silently. Their duty, their responsibility is to, without any questioning, obey the diktats and demands of their masters for whom they work. And the Manusmriti says something that's very interesting. It says even people belonging to the high castes, Brahmins and Kshatriyas, if they do the work of farmers and workers, then they should also be treated as Shudras. In fact, they lose caste. So the connection between birth, caste, and profession is all very strong in the Manusmriti. It makes no bones about it. It says those who work, those who work with their hands, those who perform manual labor, whatever even if they belong to the upper caste, if for some reason they are forced by circumstances to perform manual labor, they are to be treated as Shudras. They are to be treated as lower caste people. Now, this is very interesting because what this means is that Manusmriti is a threat to about 95% of the population. And if we are to fight the Manuwadi forces, if we are to protect the constitution, and I would say that even the constitution, though it is of course in the Indian context, a huge step forward for Indian people, for Indian women, for people belonging to the exploited classes and the exploited castes, it's a huge step forward. There was never any concept of universal equality before our constitution. We have to accept that. And it's very interesting, Razi Bhai, that in the Constituent Assembly debates, the Muslim members of the Constituent Assembly spoke in exactly the same language as the Hindu fundamentalists, opposing women's rights, opposing the rights of women to choose their marriage partners, opposing intercaste and intercommunity marriages, and so on and so forth. There was no difference in their approach. So what I'm trying to say is that when we talk about Manuwad and the influence of Manuwad, yes, we have a certain political formation, that is the Sangh Parivar, that is openly committed to the implementation of Manusmriti and the replacement of our constitution by Manusmriti, yes. But among very large sections of the Indian population, and here I would include Muslims and Christians also, we are seeing the growth, it is being written about in the last 1 week, of fundamentalist Christians who are extremely Islamophobic, who are talking the language of the right wing, and so on and so forth. So in India, in our society, we have very large sections which are very much under the influence of Manuwad. And that is why this battle is a very, very difficult battle. But if we are able to explain to people what Manusmriti will mean for them, and also to recognize in the policies of this government the influence of Manusmriti and Manuwadi ideology, if we're able to convincingly explain to them, we can also create a very large mass of support against this government, against Manuwad. Now, why am I saying that? I feel that by going on saying that they are very strong, they cannot be defeated, we are actually giving up the battle. This is not true. More than 36 or 37% of the Indian people have never voted for them. Even in the recent election, which just ended a few days ago, we have seen that, of course, the BJP won hands down in Gujarat. I think it was expected. Nobody was really putting up a fight against them. Anyway, they won. But what happened elsewhere? They lost in Delhi. Delhi has been their stronghold, their bastion. Delhi Municipal Corporation, they have ruled for more than 15 years. The population of Delhi, its makeup is very much the kind of population that one assumes will support BJP. But not only did they lose in the assembly elections, but they lost in the MCD elections also, in which, as we know, the Modi and his leaders pulled out all the stops. They arrested our ministers, they sent them to jail and so on and so forth. But despite all that, they lost. So they lost Delhi Corporation, which has got more voters, I think, than Himachal. They also lost Himachal, where I was there for the election campaign. The Congress really did put up much of a fight. So what this means is that by going on saying, oh, they can't be defeated, oh, they can't lose, we are actually making ourselves lose. We have to see, number one, that they do keep losing. In Uttar Pradesh, what happened? They had won Mainpuri, not the parliamentary seat, but many of the assembly segments. This time around, they lost the parliamentary election by more than 1 lakh votes more than last time. They lost. They also lost 2 assembly constituencies that they'd won in just 2002 March. That's a very important thing to remember. Khatoli, Muzaffarnagar, the riot hit area where they had won hands down, even after the farmers' movement in 2022, they lost this time. They lost because of a very strong opposition unity, which has many lessons for us, but they lost. They lost in, I think, Rajasthan by-election. They lost in Odisha by-election. And this certainly shows us that there are very, very large sections of people who can be mobilized against them and their Manuwadi policies, but that can happen only if the real nature of these Manuwadi policies is made clear to all those who are going to be affected. And when I talk about who are being affected, what are these policies? We only talk about attacks on minorities. That's very important. Why is it important? Of course, it's a huge attack on citizenship rights. Yes, but apart from that, the attacks on minorities are carried out to mobilize the majority community behind the Sangh Parivar. Let's not forget this very important aspect. Attacks on minorities, posing as a defender of the religious rights and other rights of the majority community, polarizes society and helps in mobilizing sections of the majority community behind the Sangh Parivar. And that's what they want. What do they want? They want to create a Hindu identity without addressing the problem of caste. They want to create a Hindu identity without destroying caste division. They want to create a Hindu identity without getting rid of caste discrimination. That is the job, that is the task that they have set for themselves. And it is our duty to see that they do not succeed in this. And it's not all that difficult. We have to see who are they attacking. They are attacking the minorities. They're attacking the Christians. No doubt about it. They have deprived large sections of Muslims in many parts of the country, North India especially UP and Madhya Pradesh, of their basic citizenship rights. It's a fact. But it's also true that the attacks on Dalits has taken up a kind of a dimension that is extraordinary. 11 Dalit women are raped every day. In BJP-ruled states, Dalit women are raped and killed every day. In BJP-ruled states, a Dalit man is killed for growing a mustache. He's killed for riding a horse in his wedding procession. He's killed for a child, Dalit child is killed for drinking water from the water pot of a high caste teacher. So the attack, the Manuwadi attack, is of course on the minorities, but it's also on Dalits. It's also on all women. Look at the brutality against women today. Yes, many of them are Dalit women, but many of them are not. The brutality, the terrible violence that women are facing is just incredible. It is just not to be believed. It's unacceptable. And at the same time, we cannot forget that workers and farmers are also being deprived of all their hard-won rights. Today, the working class is deprived of all the rights for which it had fought from before independence. Even the right to organize is being threatened. The right to minimum wages has been taken away. The public sector is being completely wound up. And the only jobs that people are getting are in the contract sector and also in the farming out of jobs. No proper permanent jobs anymore. So this is also something that we have to remember. Look at the plight of farmers. The agrarian crisis has reached such extraordinary heights. We are talking about killings of women and killings of Dalits and killings of minorities. What about suicides of farmers? What about deaths of farmers? In the 1 year farmers movement, 700 farmers died. Should we not be concerned about that? That's also part of the Manuwadi attack. It is the Manuwadi attack on working people and their rights. Farmers, workers, their rights have been taken away. But in the name of communal polarization, they are being mobilized behind the BJP. That is what we have to fight. That is our job. That this is what we have to expose. And wherever this is being done, wherever we are succeeding, certainly the results are also there for all of us to see. We cannot forget that in the last assembly election, the most vicious attacks by the BJP were in Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and Bengal. And they lost all three. They lost in Bengal, where the Prime Minister descended to I don't know what depths to call out a woman politician. In Kerala, they had one seat in the previous assembly. They even lost that. They don't have a seat in the current Kerala assembly. And in Tamil Nadu, they and their allies also faced a drubbing. So what I'm trying to say is, where their Manuwadi agenda is properly discussed, properly exposed, the results are also there for us to see. And this is what we have to keep doing. We have to tell people what is happening. Their rights are being taken away, whether they are minority, whether they are Adivasi, whether they are farmers, whether they are workers, their rights are being taken away. All women are in danger of losing all their rights. They have to understand this. They have to be made aware of this. But that is not all. What about the attack on the Constitution? Now, I told you that the mosque was demolished on the 6th of December. And I don't think that was a coincidence. The 6th of December was Dr. Ambedkar's death anniversary. And that destruction of the mosque was, of course, an attack on the beliefs of Muslims, no doubt about it, and their citizenship rights. But also it was an attack on the Constitution of India. It was an attack on the secular Constitution of India. It was telling people as far back as 1992 that this Constitution and its maker are now under attack. We are destroying them. We are attacking them. We have broken a mosque. We have defied the judiciary. We have defied everybody. And what are you going to do about it? That is what they were saying. And that's what we have to understand. That they want to demolish the Constitution. They will not say we are going to demolish it. They will not burn the Constitution like Dr. Ambedkar burnt the Manusmriti, but they will hollow it out. They will destroy it piecemeal, and they've done it. They've started doing it. What's happening? What's happening to reservation? Reservation in jobs hardly exists. Reservation in educational institutions hardly exists. There's privatization of all the public sector. There's privatization of health. There's privatization of education, which means that the poor and the deprived are going to be denied education. They're going to be denied health facilities. They're going to be denied jobs. That process has already started. The new education policy is coming in, which talks only about promoting privatization of education, which talks about changing the way history is going to be taught. That has already started. But there are many other things that are happening too. And here I would like to say that the most dangerous, as far as poor people's, poor citizens and women are concerned, is that the concept of the rule of law is being turned on its head. Today, what the BJP government is telling us is this, that a criminal will not be judged according to the gravity of his or her crime. He or she will not be punished because of the gravity of his or her crime. The criminal will be punished according to his or her caste and religion, and according to the caste and religion of the victim. This is what we are being told, and this is what we have to understand the gravity of this. This is what Hathras is telling us, where Dalit woman was raped and killed by upper caste men, protected by the government. The girl was denied justice, and even today, that case is not proceeding. The family has not been given anything that they were promised. They are living in fear. They're living in terror. And of course, what happened in Gujarat, in the Bilkis Bano case, we all know about it, that 11 mass rapists, mass murderers have been let off on the 15th of August because they were Hindu rioters who killed, raped Muslims, women, children, and men. And so therefore, their crime, the gravity of their crime has been diminished. They have been not only let loose in society, but they have been honored, they have been welcomed, and they have been called sanskari. So this is not just something that we say is anti-Dalit or anti-Muslim. No, this is actually striking at the roots of the justice system, of the rule of law. And if this continues, nobody is going to be safe in this country. As it is, the rich had an edge as far as access to justice was concerned. But now it will not only be limited to the rich, but it will be upper caste versus Dalit, upper caste versus lower caste, Hindu versus Muslim, and so on. If you belong to the right caste and if you belong to the right religion, that is the majority religion and the upper caste, then your crime will be punished in a much more lenient fashion than if you belong to the lower caste or to the minority religion. And this is also there in Manusmriti. This is the Manusmriti system of justice in which Brahmins can get away with anything, any kind of crime. They're not punished. They just have to maybe give some small fine. Whereas a lower caste person, and that time they didn't have minorities like we have today, but a lower caste person is punished with torture and death and all kinds of horrible punishments for committing a crime against an upper caste person. And a woman, an upper caste woman who has a relationship with a lower caste man, she is to be tortured, she is to be stripped, she is to be abused, she is to be humiliated, she is to be thrown out of the house, she is to be subjected to the worst kind of torture, violence, and humiliation that is imaginable. So this is the system of justice of Manusmriti, which has already started to be practiced in our country. And that's why I say that the attacks on our constitutional rights by Manuwadi forces is much wider and much deeper than what most of us believe or most of us talk about. It's essential now for us to study the extent of this danger, the extent of this attack. We have to read Manusmriti. I've been reading it and I'm appalled. But when you read it, you understand where they are going. And when you explain to other people, a lot of them say, no, we don't want to go down that route. We don't want to go there. And that is where the change in thinking starts. That is what we have to try and do. That is what we have to try and achieve. It's no use moaning and groaning and tearing our hair. That's not going to get us anywhere. It's no use speaking only in religious terms. That's not going to get us anywhere either. We have to talk about the fact that Manuwad attacks the rights of 95% of the people, all women, all Dalits, all backward caste people, all tribals, all minorities, and also most of the poor, the working people. The Manusmriti attacks all of their rights and takes them away, makes them bereft of rights. This is what has to be understood. This is what has to be talked about. This is what has to be disseminated so that those who are under attack understand that they are under attack. Right now, a lot of them don't. They feel that some things are wrong. They feel that some things that are happening are not very good, that they are being harmed. Gas prices are high and so on and so forth. But they do not realize that they are as much under attack as women, as Dalits, and as members of the minority communities. This is our task, and this is where we have to accept the challenge of Manuwadi and fight for the rights of every citizen in our country. That's the task ahead. And I'm glad, I thank you for this opportunity to share some of these feelings with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Subhashini ji. Really, the task is so complex and so monumental that to fight it out in this kind of divided societies, but the results of the recent elections and as well as the activism of the civil society also shows that there are results and there are some successes. So there is a short session of question and answer. Before that, coming week's announcement, let's see. Next Saturday is our Ambassador Ishrat Aziz Saab is going to talk on South Asia, shared prosperity, key to peace and progress. Ambassador Ishrat Aziz was Ambassador of India to UAE, Saudi Arabia, Brazil. He was the Consul General of India in San Francisco and other places. He will be introduced by Dr. Abdullah, here from local Washington, D.C. Aligarh Alumni Association, as well as concluding remarks will be given by Tariq Farooqi Saab, also belonging to the same association. And these are very senior individuals of local society here at Washington, D.C. And they all three are belonging to Aligarh boys, graduates from Aligarh. And we will see them next Saturday. So back to question and answer session, moderated by our host, Dr. Rafat Hussain. And Rafat, take word, please. There should be some questions. Yeah, thank you.
And thank you all the speaker, Professor Roop, Rekha, Verma, Saiba, and Subhashini Ali, and of course the opening remark, the recorded opening remark by Sunita Viswanath. So the session is open for question and answer. And there are two options. You can raise your digital hand or show your interest in the chat box. I will keep monitoring the chat box. So the first person who raised the hand is Aftab. And please go ahead, Aftab.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Question for Madam Subhashini Ali ji. Are not private organizations supposed to follow the reservation quota?
Subhashini ji. Let me.
What did you say?
Thank you, Subhashini ji, for your lecture. But my simple question is, like, are not private organizations, like private companies, supposed to follow constitutional guaranteed reservation quota?
No, there's no such law in India. There's no such
Thank
law. There are only pious statements made by governments, but there's no law to enforce reservations in private companies.
All right, got it. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Aftab Saab. Dr. Rudranshu Singh. Dr. Singh, please unmute yourself.
Good evening to one and all, and good morning to those sitting in US. My question is to Madam Subhashini Ali, that we are talking about misogyny and how this right-wing regime is anti-women. But ever since the UP elections, I'm extremely angry with women voters in UP. And as we saw in that, when the rapists were let off in Gujarat, women garlanded the perpetrators and convicts. Now, how come women are great fans of Modi?
Oh, come on. Why don't men do things with terrible men? Don't men go and garland men who have murdered men? Don't give me this thing. Patriarchy, communal feeling, it is not restricted to a gender, Mr. Rudranshu Singh. There are men who go around garlanding men who have murdered men. What's the big deal?
My relatives, when I visited them during the UP election, women in our family said that we feel secured in this regime.
I know that. I'm saying that. I agree with you. Upper caste women have got certainly very different perspectives. No doubt about it. And that's what we have to try and change.
And when I asked, whom do you feel secured against? They had no answers.
Yeah, you know the answer. You know the answer. We know the answer. You know the answer. Razi bhai, they feel scared of, you know.
Okay,
that's नहीं आ जाएगा उसका लड़का मेरी बेटी को भगा के ले जाएगा. That's it. That's the propaganda.
Yeah, that's okay. Let's go beyond that. Yeah.
अरे हम आपको बता रहे हैं, मैं आपको बता रही हूँ. आप यहाँ महंगाई की बात करिए, महंगाई की बात चल रही है, लोग कह रहे हैं बहुत महंगाई है, और वो कोई आएगा बीच में कहेगा अरे जानत हो वही के लड़का वही की लड़की को लेके भग गया, अब वो सब भग गया उसी में लग गए. I mean, you know, that is what is happening in our society. It's very pathetic. But it's also true that people are very worried about these questions like high prices, like high cooking gas prices, and so on and so forth. They understand these as a tax on themselves. So we are the ones who have to go around constantly talking to people. I don't want to only be talking to Razi Bhai and his friends in Washington and the diaspora. We have to be talking to people in Azamgarh, in, you know, Mubarakpur and, you know, पता नहीं कहाँ. जब तक आप लोगों के बीच में नहीं जाएंगे और उनको समझाएंगे नहीं, तब तक थोड़ी ना काम बनेगा.
So, Subhashini ji, let me ask, because I wait in the end, why there are no protests against that in Indian society?
अरे एक साल तक किसान बैठा रहा, क्या बात आप कर रहे हैं? ऐसा प्रोटेस्ट तो कहीं दुनिया में नहीं देखा गया है. What about CA? What about CA? Lakhs and lakhs of Muslim women sat on dharna for months and months and months. You don't see protests like that anywhere else in the world. But what has happened is that there's no place in the media for a protest. You can protest, but it will not be known to anybody.
Okay, I can elaborate.
Of course there are protests. Of course there are protests. This is the biggest falsehood that we have accepted, that there are no protests. There are huge protests.
Okay. So my point was different, and I will elaborate later when time permits. So next person is Satyanath Chaudhary sir.
Yeah, just wanted to express my appreciation to all the presenters, and in particular Subhashini ji's. Also Sunita ji's speech should be really translated in all languages and propagated all over India as possible. These Manuwadis are already at work and spreading propaganda that some of the elements of Manusmriti have been tampered with by the anti-Hindu forces. So don't believe them. But on the whole, Manusmriti is good for the country or something. We have to counter this somehow by reproducing the original Manusmriti and handing it over to all the people in India. Thank you. If you could read the whole comment I've read, I would appreciate. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And the next person is Evangeline Anderson Rajkumar. Please.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I really want to give a shout out to all the presenters for so beautifully connecting the dots of patriarchy, casteism, and the isms, all the isms. I would like to also thank as well as highlight, that issue that Subhashini ji mentioned, highlighted herself, that the demolition of Babri Masjid to happen on December 6th is not an accident. And picking out these days to expand on that power of patriarchy and Brahmanical, this hierarchy, is so well planned and executed that what follows is maybe just a few days of ooh and ah and pain, but after that, it simply dies down. And I'm wondering whether this is also part of the plan of the power mongers who would like to distract that crowd, that, it is depending on that amnesia of the people who can so easily forget what happened. And so how important it is for us to connect history and talk about it and, write these peoples, especially those whose voices have been dimmed, silenced, if those voices can be written back into history. Another thing I would like to highlight is not just picking of those dates of, say, December 6th for demolition of Babri Masjid, but also there is a very familiar pattern in the time that these incidents are happening, because 1992 Babri Masjid, 2002 Godhra, 2012 Kandhamal, 2022 we have seen enough and more. What is it about these times that there is that, what shall I say? Just in case people have forgotten, here it is. It comes back into people's memories and the way history is challenged. So I'm wondering whether, how to follow up these conferences or these occasions with even more emphatic response, collective response. And I do believe that interfaith, interreligious perspective and approach, there lies the key, where we come together beyond our differences and kind of address that issue of justice, embodied justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Vin. So it was kind of a comment or Subhashini ji or Roop Rekha ji, you want to say something? Okay, let's move on. Malcolm Joseph Saab.
Namaskar. I want to thank you so much for this wonderful set of presentations. I also want to appreciate all the comments that have been made so far, especially just now by Ms. Evangeline. I want to speak of only one point which the last speaker spoke about, was about the need for hope. And I have in my hand a book called If Not Now, When? This was published in India at the Indian Social Institute in Delhi. If Not Now, When? Disquieting Feminist Questions. Unfortunately, people do not seem to know about this book, and it is not yet been bought. I think it is a classic for hope. It was published by editors, let me see. I can send it to you as a link, but the editors are Dr. Astrid Lobo Gajiwala, then Kochurani Abraham, and Prashant Olalekar. It gives you a detailed account of all the various struggles that are happening, the organizations, the amount of work which is being done at all levels, from up to down in society in India. And also gives you a hint that people abroad too are worried about it. But just now, to add to what Sunita ji and all have said so far, we need to get hope and to know that there are many people who are involved in the struggle, not only individuals, but more importantly, a huge number of organizations, grassroots, up, down, in and out. So if not now, when? Disquieting Feminist Questions, published 2022 by Indian Social Institute, Delhi. Okay, thank you very much.